The Fantastic Four are more than just a team of superheroes. They were pioneers who revolutionized the genre, forever changing the landscape of comics and influencing countless creators today. In this video, I'm going to be talking about this team, and frankly, one that is super underrated in the superhero genre. I think it's a great team of characters. We're going to be diving into why that is, a little bit of their history, and kind of where they're at today. So, starting out, the Fantastic Four were created in 1961 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, which would unknowingly change comic history in the process. These two are famous for creating the iconic and different superheroes of their time, but this, the first family of Marvel, as many deem them, were a very relatable and human family of superheroes. Now, just like many Marvel characters, the debate on who was actually responsible for the creation of these characters is debated, even to this day. However, it is believed that Lee was responsible for the initial synopsis and outline of these characters and their story, while Kirby's involvement came when he took Lee's plot and used his very unique and iconic imagination to create a full visual comic issue with Lee, adding in his dialogue and captions. So as you could see, the two are very equal in being credited with the creation of this team, each giving iconic contributions to this family. It is speculated that Lee was tasked with creating a team of heroes for Marvel after publisher Martin Goodman saw the success of DC's Justice League and wanted to jump at that opportunity to create something similar, thus tasking Lee with this, and obviously Stan took it in his own direction. Now, the team's origin is iconic, but if you don't know, Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, is the genius scientist. Sue Storm, aka Invisible Woman, is his girlfriend / wife, depending on where we find the team in their story and what time period we're in. Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, is her hot-headed younger brother, pun intended. And rounding out the team is Ben Grimm, aka the Thing, who is Reed's best friend, who is rough but lovable. Also, pun intended with the rough there. Their superhero story begins when they embark on a journey to space and encounter cosmic rays. And in return, they receive powers, which also come with great physical and mental burdens, which is another thing that is very unique for this kind of genre, because usually you think of superpowers and you just think of the person becoming basically like a god-level human, and there's really no downsides to it. But as I said before, most heroes of the time were almost godlike and didn't really have flaws, but this family was designed to be very human and vulnerable. They argued, had financial success and troubles, personal insecurities, and struggled to deal with their own powers. Ben Grimm probably being the best example of this on the team. He struggled the most with his, and he became a hideous rock monster in his eyes, which adds a very tragic layer to the seemingly ideal reality of getting superpowers. All of this made the team relatable to readers in a way that wasn't done before at the time. As you could tell, this team is all about breaking conventions and barriers, and another way they did this was by not having secret identities. Now, most superheroes, almost automatically come with a secret identity. From Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent over in DC, to Peter Parker and Matt Murdock here in Marvel. Most, if not all, superheroes seem to have one, and it almost feels like a requirement in the genre itself. But when you look at Marvel compared to DC, you see a lot of differences. And one of the most prominent I found was the lack of secret identities in the Marvel universe. And this team was one of the biggest first examples of that. I mean, the Marvel universe has always felt more grounded in reality, at least in the cities they decide to use. They use existing cities that are in our world. A lot of the heroes are more like celebrities, and they're not really hiding their identities, aside from a select few. But yeah, this team was definitely the first example of this new take on superheroes. They were public figures in their world, living in a giant skyscraper in New York City, dealing with being celebrities. The core of this team, however, is their relationships. Whether it's Reed and Sue's romance, both on again, off again, sometimes, again, depending on where you find them. But that's comics for you. Johnny's sibling rivalry with his sister, Sue, or Ben's friendship with Reed. There's never been a shortage of banter and stories to bounce off of all this, despite their fighting. They truly care for each other, which in turn made the reader care for them, and made them invested in this family fighting crime, and oftentimes world-ending cosmic events. But they were more than just crime fighters. They were explorers and scientists first and foremost. After all, that's what got them their powers in the first place. Even after receiving their powers, their stories often involved venturing into other dimensions, finding alien races, and facing large cosmic threats, as I just mentioned. Now, Kirby would use this to introduce characters we now know as some of the most iconic Marvel Universe villains. For example, Doctor Doom, Galactus, and the Silver Surfer. The two you've probably seen in the new upcoming movie, but this and more in this team's cosmic runs in their comics were, integral characters that were introduced. And honestly, it changed the trajectory of Marvel, in my opinion, because these are Marvel's most iconic villains, and they all came from this one team. Now, with Kirby's imagination and outright otherworldly illustrations, and Lee's clever character-defining dialogue, they created one hell of a team. I mean, a groundbreaking approach. The Fantastic Four didn't just introduce a new type of superhero team we've never seen before. They single-handedly laid the groundwork for the modern shared universe concept we see today. So they weren't just breaking down, one barrier. I mean, this team created by these two geniuses in the comic industry, they changed the landscape entirely. Because prior to the Fantastic Four, most comic characters existed in their own isolated universes, and that's even including ones by the same publisher. But Kirby and Lee started to change the standard, first doing so by having a recurring rogues gallery. Before this, it was popular for villains to be one-offs, and never really show back up again to face off against the heroes in said story. However, the Fantastic Four had a strong recurring rogues gallery, like Mole Man and Doctor Doom, with Doom being the most popular and significant by far, as Doom would become a significant threat in other heroes' stories, even threatening people like the Avengers and Marvel Universe of characters as a whole in the future. Now, Kirby specifically is well known for his contributions to the cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. That much is known. Most recently, I remember people bringing it up a lot with the Eternals movie. And some of his most iconic starts with this team branched off in other stories as well. Villains like Galactus and the Silver Surfer debuted in Fantastic Four number 48 through 50, which was a story that increased the stakes to possible universal destruction and a fight for power on a cosmic scale, with the Silver Surfer being the herald of Galactus, two characters who could honestly have their own video, which I would gladly do if there's interest in it, because I love those characters, and I'd be happy to talk about them even more. But these two would go on to threaten other characters across the Marvel Universe. Next up, we have the Watcher, or Uatu, who was also introduced and was sort of an all-seeing eye in the world. He would observe the events of Earth, and his presence is important because he would also be seen watching other heroes' stories in different comic runs, further tying this universe together and making it feel very shared. Now, you may have also recently seen him in Marvel's What If show on Disney+. Obviously, he has a huge role in that. If you haven't, I won't spoil it, but he definitely has a big part in that, and it's it gives off the same vibes as his initial comic appearances. Now, as I mentioned before, this family would explore and eventually run into alien races, the most prominent and stubborn of which being the Skrulls. This was a shape-shifting alien race first introduced in the Fantastic Four number 2, and would go on to be a much larger threat in the Marvel Universe due to their unique abilities. And again, you probably know the Skrulls from Captain Marvel, but yes, they did originate here in the Fantastic Four comics. So again, another huge threat, and honestly a really cool threat that this team introduced. Next up, we got the Kree and Inhumans, who also debuted against this family. And while you may have seen both Skrulls in the Kree and Captain Marvel, they actually started here, like I said, the Kree included in that. The Inhumans, however, are lesser known, as they have only appeared in a couple modern Marvel projects, most recently, I believe, being the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and they only had one Inhuman in that. But they are a race of superpowered beings which established a hidden society in this Marvel universe, further adding to the lore and the depth of this world instead of having it just be surface level. There was a lot going on behind the scenes, a lot bubbling up, that probably had readers constantly thinking about it and wondering where it was going to go. But it wasn't just villains. The Fantastic Four would also have a lot of guest appearances and team-ups. This was significant because it wasn't just a cash grab. This meant all of these heroes, these huge heroes, existed in the same world. Some even living in the same city and reading about each other or seeing their work on the news. This included iconic characters like Spider-Man, the Hulk, and the Avengers. And if you don't know, without getting too far into it, Spider-Man has a rich history with this team specifically. He has a great friendship with Johnny Storm. He even eventually joins the team at some point, but that's a story for another time. Again, if you want to hear more about stuff like that, just let me know down below, and I'd be happy to make a video about it. Now, because all these things in this world were interconnected, it allowed for cool team-ups, but also consequences for events, such as something as small as the Thing destroying buildings in New York could be mentioned by Spider-Man in his own comic, or Reed Richards could be hunted down by Doom across different stories or issues, all creating a world and comics with actual stakes. But a comic with history like this also allowed its characters to grow. As I mentioned earlier, depending on where you find them, Reed and Sue would go on to get married and eventually even have a very powerful children in Franklin and Valeria. Again, those two characters, you're going to sense a pattern in this video with this team. Those two characters alone could have their own video. I mean, I could definitely figure out like probably 20 to 30 minutes of just talking about those two. But that allows readers to invest in their story even more. And it encourages them to keep following along. And it sets up the stage for the modern comic universe by doing that. As mentioned before, these innovations that the Fantastic Four comics implemented would be adopted by other Marvel comic runs as well. Even comics as a whole, honestly, not just Marvel. It's no secret that Marvel is good at building a universe, especially if you are familiar with the MCU, as I've mentioned a few of their projects. I mean, it's no secret it's one of the most iconic modern franchises or like empires in movies today. But what if I told you that they weren't just doing it right now? They were doing it long before that. I mean, seriously, Kirby and Lee's collaboration would allow this world to flourish, and seeing as they would collaborate on other Marvel projects outside of this team, it's no surprise how this world was built and weaved together so well. And this in turn led to iconic events within the universe like Secret Wars and Civil War. Now, because the Fantastic Four was grounded in a real city like New York, while still having fantastical elements, it was yet another way to encourage readers and keep them invested. Other universes had fictional cities like Gotham City or Metropolis, and while the Marvel Universe has its share of those fictitious cities, it's definitely more based in real and tangible cities that we know in our own world. Without the Fantastic Four, a lot of what we know and love about modern comic storytelling is thanks to this family and its creators. Now, the influence on pop culture is, something that cannot be understated. And that's why I'm saying, this team feels super underrated to me, because I feel like they don't get enough love that they deserve. This family has been around since the 60s, or as Doctor Strange puts it in the Multiverse of Madness, didn't they chart in the 60s? Which, they obviously did. So, yet, they managed to stick around. And we have definitely gone over most of what made this possible. But we have not talked about their internal conflicts that each character faces and that makes them so unique. I started to touch on it earlier, but this is really what makes the team human and relatable. Their powers didn't solve their problems. In fact, it actually made some of them worse. Ben Grimm specifically, because the exposure to cosmic rays, he was a normal human before that. But because of those, he became a horrible rock monster in his own eyes. Now, he was a friend of Reed and almost a surrogate uncle to Sue and Johnny Storm. But after his powers, he could only see himself as a monster and was continuously wishing to go back to his old regular self. Now, this was briefly explored in the 2005 Fantastic Four film, where it is shown that Ben had a wife, actually, who seemingly loved him and whom he loved. But upon returning to Earth and seeing himself after his accident, he tries to show her, but convinces himself not to, because he's just not ready for her to see him like that. He thinks that, she won't accept him for who he is now. And it's only when he's staring over the edge of a bridge, seemingly contemplating the worst. I'm sure you can, put two and two together. But knowing it probably won't work because, he's a man made out of rock. But this forces him into helping unintentionally, because as he's on that bridge, he sees a man trying to do the same thing. He stops him, but in turn, it causes a lot of commotion on the bridge, and, a lot of stuff happens, and it forces the rest of the team to test their powers in that moment and help Ben. And that's something that it's not really talked about, but I love how that was their introduction to, their powers. They weren't really... there's a lot of themes in this where it's like they're not really given a choice, but they have to, do it anyways. They have to deal with the cards they've been dealt, which I really like. So yeah, all seems well until his wife sees him, and there's all this commotion, and she proceeds to take her ring off and drop it on the ground, confirming Ben's worst fear about all of this, being that, she won't want him anymore. Almost more heartbreaking, though, is that in this fact, in this moment, Ben can't even pick the ring up off the pavement, which shows so much layers to his character and what he's going through, and it says so much without saying anything at all, honestly. And I think it's so good. I never really picked up on stuff like this as a kid, but if you watch these movies as an adult, you're like, God, that is so sad and so, poetic, but also horrible. So yeah, as you can tell, this team and its members are not immune to weakness or insecurity, even when they seemingly have everything a person could ask for. The way the team combats this, though, is through their unity, and it's a great way to show the reader that you can have differences with your family or your friends. You could fight, but if you look out for each other and you come together when it matters most, you could defeat anything that stands in your way, and that's what family is all about. Now, the Fantastic Four today and their future is pretty bright looking, as many of you may already know, having clicked on this video. The family is alive and very well, especially today with the upcoming release of the Fantastic Four, The First Steps. And as I briefly mentioned, there have been other adaptations other than just comics. They have appeared in games like Fantastic Four, 1997, The Fantastic Four, 2005, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, 2007, and many more. They also have live-action adaptations in The Fantastic Four, 1994, The Fantastic Four, 2005, and The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, 2007. As well as, like I mentioned before, the upcoming release of Fantastic Four, The First Steps in 2025. Now, the new film will follow Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, and Ebon Moss-Bachrach, I hope I'm saying that right, as Ben Grimm. Now, plot details have been kept pretty well under wraps, but based off the trailer, it seems to serve as an origin story for the team, and possibly Reed or something else happens that triggers Galactus and the female version of the Silver Surfer, Shalla-Bal, to herald his arrival into the MCU, which is something fans of the MCU have been anticipating, basically since its conception, and we knew where it was taken off to. People have been wanting to see Galactus for a long time, especially since they kind of messed it up really bad in that 2007 Fantastic Four film. But it was also revealed that Franklin Richards, Reed and Sue's son, as I mentioned before, will be introduced in this movie, which is also seemingly teased from the title, the First Steps. There's double meanings to that. It's their origin story, so First Steps they are like astronauts, so, First Steps works for that too. but also obviously a new child. So it's very exciting, and I am personally looking forward to this new take on the team. I'm excited to see how they end up in our MCU as we know it today, and I want to see them interact with everyone. I mean, one of the things I love so much for some reason in these kind of superhero movies are the interactions. For example, in that Spider-Man movie, when the three of the Spider-Men were talking to each other, I could have watched a whole movie of just that, because I love seeing, like, multiple characters that I've loved growing up, seeing how they would play off of each other. And the Fantastic Four is something I've always wanted to see in our MCU. Now, if I could have every wish possible, I would love to see, like, the original Avengers team from the MCU interact with, like, the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and the Spider-Men. I mean, I'm a greedy fan. But at the end of the day, I think it would be awesome to see that. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of possibility. But in the end, this team or family is very special to me and hundreds of thousands of other people. And I hope you enjoy what I had to say. I could have gotten something wrong. So if I do, or if I did, please let me know down below, because I know how passionate some comic fans can be, which is great. I think it's really awesome that, people care so much, because it's such a great source material. And as I mentioned, if you guys would like to see more stuff on some of the other characters I touched on, or storylines I mentioned in this video, let me know, and I'm happy to make that as well. But I just wanted to talk about this team because, the release of the new Fantastic Four movie is obviously coming up soon, and I think they deserve a lot more love, because I've seen some people hesitant about the new movie, and I'm excited to give it a fair shake and see where they take it, where they go with it, especially with the introduction of Franklin Richards. I think the possibilities are endless, and I will definitely be giving my review on that movie if I have time, because I'm seeing that day one. I mean, I have to be seated. So yeah, that's it for this one. Like I said, if you agree or disagree, let me know down below. Let me know what you think of the team, if you have any experiences or good memories associated with this team. And until next time.